We have all seen or heard of these games before. The moments in Sonic that many consider to be a low point in a long string of games that were less than up to quality. Once gaming's most revered pop culture icon, now the unfortunate subject of punchlines at their expense, which many will attribute to the release of two games, both at different time periods, and while different in many ways, both share a similar unfortunate legacy. Those games of course being the infamous Sonic 06 and Sonic Forces. I am not going over Sonic Boom, no. But which was the worst game, and which left the series in a worse state than how it once was? Let's find out. This is Sonic 06 versus Sonic Forces. Let's start off with most would see before playing the game, the box art. Sonic 06's box art is striking, not overly cluttered, and is overall nice to look at. You can make that into a poster. Sonic Forces box art, while looking fine, doesn't really compare to Sonic 06's box art. The characters just kind of look stiff and inflexible, while the whole image just kind of looks stuff a lot of stuff. Either way you slice it, both of these box arts are kind of false advertising when you look at the actual story, which we'll get into in a minute, but in terms of looks, Sonic 06 comes out on top just easily. It just looks better and can actually mislead you into thinking, wow, this is going to be a great time, whereas with Sonic Forces, I mean, you bought a game that looked like this. What were you expecting? You have no one to blame but yourself here. Winner, Sonic 06. Let's look at the story. The general plot of Sonic 06 goes like this. Princess Elise is the ruler of the beautiful Italian-esque city of Soliana. However, she contains a power that can cause worldwide destruction and chaos simply by crying. What do I mean by crying? I don't know, maybe just tears of sadness, it isn't really clear. The nefarious Dr. Eggman, however, is after that power, and Sonic is constantly trying, and failing, to prevent her from being kidnapped. Meanwhile, Shadow the Hedgehog is trying to solve a mystery surrounding Mephiles, a dark mirror to whatever's inside Elise, a new Silver Hedgehog from a destroyed future who wants Sonic dead because he believes he was the trigger behind it, confusing time travel rules, plot points that are unclear what they're trying to say, and Sonic, the title character of the game and the only one of the box art, barely has an influence in anything. This plot synopsis took up the entire space of a paragraph, and that just kind of shows you how overly long and complicated it is. And that's just a summary. Sonic Forces' plot has the exact opposite problem. It's very bare. Eggman has harnessed the power of the Phantom Ruby. What does it do? Apparently it creates optical illusions, but it does actually harm and affect real people, except when it doesn't when it's convenient for the plot. Anyways, Eggman has taken over 99% of the world with this power, and it's up to Sonic, classic Sonic, who's here because of some multiverse stuff, despite Sonic Generations being betrayed as Sonic's past self, and your own sea to save the world. And that's it. The overall campaign is around 4 hours max, which is the shortest campaign for a Sonic game up to this point, and it is leaving a lot to be desired. Like Sonic 06, it is packed with plot holes, stuff that isn't really explained well, and with a little touch of mistranslation. In one scene, Silver says,
"Tails has just lost it."
While in the Japanese dub, he's meant to say Tails has gone missing, which makes more sense. The more you look into this, the more the plot just kind of stops making sense, you know what I mean? In terms of which one I tolerate more, I don't know, Forces. I know that may seem sacrilegious to those who want every Sonic game to be an incredible, long, lifelong changing journey. And while those plots are fine and have made for some iconic stories, it can't get to the point where it's just too much to keep track of, and Sonic 06 had reached that point. And while I also don't like the oversimplified story of Forces, I can at the very least understand what's going on a half majority of the time, kinda not really. Winner, Sonic Forces. Let's get on to gameplay. Sonic 06's gameplay is a bit complicated to explain, but I'll do my best. It essentially works how level design worked in the classic games, just applied to a 3D space, with there being multiple pathways that all converge at several points, with there being stopping points where you can explore the area and find secrets, along with occasional scripted events and wait. This is just Sonic Adventure 3, which honestly would have been a better selling title given the not yet ruined reputation of the Adventure games and making it so it's not false advertising. Yeah, the commercials and the overall marketing of the game would have you believe that they were taking a completely new, different direction with Sonic, when in reality it was literally just the same concepts as the previous Adventure games, but a bit more clunky and slow. Sonic Forces gameplay takes a page from the boost formula. The main difference is that while a game like Sonic Generations has levels that allow you to use the boost in fun and creative ways, and making sure the levels aren't just one long straight linear path that you just boost through in order to get an S rank, Sonic Forces does the opposite. These levels are the most linear, boring, flavorless levels I've ever played in a Sonic game. I remember playing this game in like 2019 and thinking, it wasn't that bad. But then after playing Sonic Generations and going back to play Forces, the quality difference was too vast to ignore. In terms of which gameplay style I prefer, Sonic 06 is just like the default choice. Winner, Sonic 06. Let's look at some of the other playable characters these games have to offer, mainly because the previous paragraphs were getting way too long, so yeah. Sonic 06 features around 10 playable characters throughout each of the playable campaigns, those being Sonic Story, Shadow Story, and Silver Story. Now that may sound like a lot, however the levels featuring other characters generally had the same level design with slight modifications to adjust to their abilities. Which just makes me wonder why they didn't just have you play through the levels as Sonic first before unlocking the other characters once you complete and being able to play through the level as said characters to find secrets using their abilities instead of just switching over to that character in the middle of a level. Anyways, Sonic Forces has around 3 playable characters in total, which is undeniably lacking. Those characters being Modern Sonic, Classic Sonic, and the Rookie, aka the Avatar. Modern Sonic uses the boost formula without any of the flavor, but I do love a bear Pop-Tart. Classic Sonic uses the classic style from Generations but without any of the good physics. And then there's the Avatar character, aka the Rookie. I went into this game expecting to be completely uninterested in the whole customization aspect, but I was wrong. I changed my character almost every time I unlock something. It's really fun. Until you realize you're playing your character in levels that are pretty much just Sonic's levels, but without the boost. It did get some DLC where you can play as Shadow, but those are mainly just reskinned Sonic levels, so yeah. Which do I prefer? Sonic 06. Sure, the gameplay of the actual characters in each campaign were very different from the main character you played as, but at the very least, it wasn't just a reskin of the same levels already in the game, just with some weird boxes thrown around to make it go an alternate path. Winner, Sonic 06. Alright, no more beating around the bush, let's get to the root of why these games are the way that they are. Almost everybody knows the story behind Sonic 06, so I'll try to keep it brief. Essentially, Sonic Team wanted to create the next-gen Sonic game for all consoles released in 2006 for the 50th anniversary of the series. However, after realizing that the Wii was a lot less powerful than the other consoles and seeing the hype around it, they decided to split the team up so that one half continued work on 06, while the other half did a Wii game. That and the head of the project leaving, along with continuing to push the deadline of holiday 2006, meaning when it was released on November 14th, 2006, it flopped hard critically. Right. On to Sonic Forces. I made a comment on a post made by Punk Sonic a couple of months ago, joking about how Sonic games should only have weird plots and were probably made in a short amount of time, to which he responded saying,
Sonic Forces was in development for 6 years.
Of course, when I first heard that, I was like, seriously? 6 years for this? You gotta be pulling on my leg here right now. So I looked at the timeline. 6 years of development time is that this game would have started up around 2011, same year as Sonic Generations coming out. Over that period of time, Sonic Lost World came out, which was treated as a mainline entry. The 3-game contract with Nintendo happened, an entirely different sub-series of games that came out over a period of 3 years, which flunked hard and caused Sega to file for bankruptcy in 2015, and all the while, backlash against the Sonic series at the time continued and persisted. With all this information at hand, it just seems like Sonic Forces feels like more of a post-it note at the back of the fridge that you forget about until you're like, sure. And I'm pretty sure that explains why Sonic Forces feels so low quality. So which has a better reasoning as to why they're bad? A bit of a hot take here, but I'm gonna have to say Forces. I know it can be argued effectively that Sonic 06 had a more hectic production schedule, however I feel like it was more possible to delay that to like 2007 than it was with Sonic Forces, considering the whole bankruptcy thing that happened around that time. Sure, you had Mania, but other than that, if they didn't make this game, they thought, oh man, we're gonna have a complete financial meltdown. Yes, it was Sega's fault that Sonic Boom happened, but we're looking at this from a Sonic Forces perspective. It was screwed from the very beginning. However, no matter how they ended up the way that they did, if they're bad, word spreads fast. And this leads me to my final point. But for now, winner, Sonic Forces. The legacy of these games is what everybody truly remembers about them. Controversy, online arguments, harassment, all of which happened following these games' releases, and the franchise was never the same afterwards. But there's a key difference that makes it feel like this isn't just another repeat of history. Let me explain. Sonic 06 post-launch was a bust, to say the least. It wasn't just a case of, oh, it's a spin-off or something like that. With this, there was no avoiding it. This was a new low point in the Sonic series that hadn't existed beforehand. The way Sega handled the aftermath is what some might consider poor to an extent. For some reason, yearly releases continued up until 2011, with it seeming like Sega was just trying to find some sort of formula to latch onto for the next couple of years. That formula would come with the release of Sonic Unleashed with the Boost formula. And after a quick recasting and some new story writers, the series entered what some might call the Colors era. While the gameplay was significantly more polished, it did leave a lot to be desired in the writing department, as the characters became simplified and less involved in the plot, which is most likely an attempt to get rid of the negative reputation around 06. These complaints and persistent problems will all come to a head in 2017 with the release of Sonic Forces. Yeah, kinda crazy to think that 06 inadvertently caused Forces to be created. In an ironic twist of fate, and trying to prevent a failure like 06 from occurring again, they ended up creating another one of its kind. This time, the reaction was worse. I know several Sonic fans that just straight up left the series after the release of Forces, and after what we've just seen, what could be achieved when love, effort, and time is put into a Sonic game, and for this to release in the same year, I don't entirely blame them. Although, despite having a worse impact, it might have actually been worth it in the long run. Let me explain. In the aftermath of Forces, information on Sonic games just kinda stopped for a while. No major news was really being leaked, Sega stayed mostly quiet, and overall it was just a really blank time. Eventually, 4 years and an actually good video game movie later, in 2021, a new teaser was released showing off a brand new Sonic game. After that, over the next year, more and more of the game was being unveiled, and what was shown was pretty incredible. A new series storyline, top-notch animation, amazing voice acting, and being headed by one of the most respected writers in Sonic media, it was all unbelievable. As I'm recording this, Sonic Frontiers has just released, and from what I can see in my own personal experience of playing it, it's a pretty damn good game. It's incredible that the same franchise that only 5 years ago being cited as never good is now in the state where it has 2 highly successful movies under its belt, a new TV show set to debut in December, and a prolific community that's just now getting out of the negative connotation surrounding it, with the internet's realization that every fanbase is going to have its toxic people with it. And in my opinion, I don't think we would be here if not for the negative reception of Sonic Forces. All the backlash and negative things directed at Forces ultimately showed Sega a vast majority of us weren't going to openly take rush poor quality products anymore. Aside from Colors Ultimate, but still. It was time for something to change, and existing in a slightly more mature internet, everyone kinda knew what the answer was. Give your games more time and attention. The ultimate fall of Sonic and even Sega, in my opinion, wasn't just a result of too much experimentation or warehogs or stuff like that. It was rushing into projects, giving them barely any time to be fully thought through, and then immediately rushing them out to market before immediately abandoning them for the next thing. That's how we ended up with third-party Sega, 06, Forces, Ultimate. All of it can be somewhat attributed to lack of good development time. Luckily, Sega seems to have learned a lesson permanently this time. Instead of floating around one game style to the next and hoping one would stick, they actually took the time to identify the problem, fix it, and hopefully create a better future for the Sonic series. And in that case, Sonic Forces comes out on top. Winner, Sonic Forces. And the total score for which is the least bad game comes out to a tie at 3-3. Who would have guessed? I ultimately think that your own opinion on which is worse will probably depend on what you prefer in a Sonic game. If you prefer the adventure style, you'll probably think Sonic Forces is worse. If you prefer the boost style, you'll probably think 06 is worse. As a person who's played and enjoyed both, these games are generally on the same level for me. I don't like them, but their soundtracks are absolutely fire. But anyways, whether which one you think is worse, it's undeniable that they've left a permanent stain on Sonic's reputation. And while these stains can't be removed, they can certainly be learned from. Don't push a deadline if you can't reach it. Don't have a billion other projects going on at the same time. Have a focus as to what direction you want to take. And at the top of it all, give the time and care it needs. Because if you don't, bad things tend to be a common outcome. Both of these games will forever be remembered for all the right and wrong reasons, and they deserve to be. So hopefully we don't end up repeating history. Sonic is entering a new golden age, and with all that we learned, hopefully this one lasts longer than the ones that came before it. Anyways, this is Liam Keenan, and I'm out to play Sonic Frontiers.